We're good.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Fabiola Flores, and I am the SFMS manager. And we welcome you this morning to our SFMS user group. It's the first one of the year, so a happy 2023 to everybody. Last time we saw each other was in November, so lots has happened since then. So why don't we get started because we do have a full agenda. And let me just walk you through the agenda real quick. So we have the payroll replacement project update, and we have Seth Lewis here and Jennifer Taylor that are going to walk you through some of what's going on with the payroll project. We have Nicole here for the Oregon Buys update. Lots going on with Wave 2 agencies. And then we have Carlene that's going to walk us through the 1099 update. And we have the R-Star screen highlight that we've been having for, I think, the last year, or maybe two, because I'm losing track. Every user group, we highlight a screen. And Maria is going to be doing that one. And then we have the Payment Control Archive, one of our normal reoccurring programs that start off the year for us. And Juan is going to be doing that. And then Financial Archive, we do it every year, but it's one of our biggest jobs. And we try to limit any kind of agency responsibilities. And Alan will talk you through that. And then we have Life of a Warrant. And Juan is going to talk about that piece. I think that's going to be the interesting piece because there's just a lot happening with warrants, and we really don't feel it because we don't see them because we send them to the P&D and they send them out, or you have some that come back to the agency. But the life of the warrant, it's quite extensive in my opinion. So that'll be exciting to hear about. Then we have the profile role, and Jennifer is going to talk about that you will have some responsibilities on that. And then program structure review, it's a odd year. So then that means we're going to start the biennium and we have some work to do before we do that. And now is a good time to figure that piece out. So Liz is going to walk you through that. And we also have Orbit Sabers is going to be here. I'm assuming you're here already, but we'll just kind of go through that. And then we have the DAFR highlight. This is going to be new. So this year we want to highlight one of our reports. We have about 250 reports that we can run weekly or at month end. And so a lot of people don't know that, and they go straight to the OB queries, and that's fine. And you will hear me say that the query is only as good as the user, because if you can't tie that query to a report that nobody has touched, then there's an issue. Or to the system. Those are the two things that I always say. Okay, your query can run, but if you can't tie the numbers out, then I don't know how you have comfort in your query. And a user is a user. So we're going to start highlighting a report every user group, and we're just going to walk you through it because the reports are hard to read, but once you figure it out, then it makes more sense. So, and then at the end, we're going to go through some of the OB reminders. So we have a full agenda, and to kick us off, is it going to be Seth or Jennifer? I'm not sure who's going to take the first piece, but I will let you guys do.
I'm doing the first piece.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Okay, where's my take control button? There we go. Okay. So I'm going to start us off, and let's see. So we're talking about the interface to SFMA. What changes we've done specifically to the current document numbers. So specifically, the run identifier for all T codes that are associated with the interfaces from Workday have changed. However, it's only in even years they've changed. So in even years, we're using an alpha for the run indicator, which is the last character in the current document number. So for example, a T850 would be PA, agency number, December would be month 12, and then run 1 would be an A, run 2 would be an B. In odd years, we're going to numeric. We're in an odd year currently. So for December of last year, you saw the alpha. Now you're seeing the numeric come through for run 1, and you'll be seeing that shortly for run 2. So why are we doing this? SFMA has issues with duplicate current document numbers in the same FY. And things where that may occur is HEM. Happens every few years that instead of getting paid on July 1st, we get paid on June 30th because HEM posts forward, which most of you don't see. That becomes an issue because you have two current document numbers in the same FY. If we're alternating, we never have that issue and have to monitor that. Additionally, with the T code 851, which is the receivable to SFMA, that is now posting to the date of the payment. So you may have multiple payments, multiple receivables throughout the month. And so that's indicated on that. And if we have multiple current document numbers with multiple dates, it can cause issues. Therefore, this solves that. And also at Go Live. If you remember at Go Live, we had OSPA files coming in for December, and we had Workday files. So having the even years for Workday start with alpha or be an alpha resolved any potential issues we'd have at Go Live with conflicting current document numbers. So we want to talk about issues that were reported in the December files. We did have some delayed interface files from Workday. We are, especially run one, it's a lot of processing power that it needed. And I think it was more than they initially expected. We still had another hiccup at January run one, but run two, we think we've got that solid. And we are working through the issues and making sure they get done in a timely manner. We also wanted to talk about at December run one, we had grant and project phase issues where the phase duplicated for grant and project ID. That was resolved for run two. A lot of agencies weren't made aware of the issue because you weren't affected. So it affected 23 out of 73 agencies, which was 31%. Only 9 agencies out of those 23 had greater than 100 errors. So, but those agencies that had a lot of errors had a lot of errors. So there were 24,835 out of 120,815 lines total on the interface, and that was 21%. We did work through with a number of agencies trying to help them, figure out the I think it was the current document suffix, and that helped us, change those, find out where all the changes were specifically, and make those as quickly as possible. We did also help them with a macro. And then also we did find that the projects were missing Ps. That was resolved for run two. So the agencies affected by that, there were a total of 8. Those agencies were also affected by the project and phase issue. So, and our solution for the project and phase project and grant phase issue was actually the same for the project issue. So 8 agencies were affected, a total of 25 projects, which was 727 lines. For December, we had no reported issues. So then we wanted to talk about the 54 screen for updates. So this is actually the tool that we used for doing those updates. We were able to select the batch on the 54A screen. If you go in from the 54A screen, if you press F5, it takes you to the 54B screen where you can do detail correction, which is an immediate correction. If you go into F6, it takes you to the 54D screen, which is a batch detail correction, and that posts that night in batch processing. So the ideal way is via the 54B screen. However, For some agencies, their files were too large and it wouldn't let them do that. So that's where we use the 54D screen. And to use that, the batch sequence number, that's the one, not the current document sequence. The batch sequence number comes in, is very, very helpful because you can choose a specific sequence and the field ID. Here's a snapshot of the 54C, which has all of the field IDs. And you can change those based on, I know this sequence, this field ID should be this, and save those changes. We do have a macro for updates by batch sequence number. So, and we have a version for the 54B and also the 54D screen, although ours is only set up for one of the emulators. It is not set up for Hummingbird. Although I think I can connect you with somebody who does have a Hummingbird copy if you'd like. So if that would be helpful, please let me know and we can pass on that macro. So, okay, so we also wanted to talk about OBIEE for Workday data. So I do have a copy in a shared folder under shared folders, agencies, 107, SFMS unit, payroll related, Workday cost and earnings, and deductions. And this is the table is Workday cost, earnings, cost deductions. And this is really what you're going to find most helpful in pulling data, specifically if you're looking for the who. You have something in your transactions that's the wrong PCA, you can find who it is. You will need access to the Workday data for that. So, and then this is what we put together. We're going to send this out. And it's the PDF calendar of dates. What we found is the really important is the report effective date. It is subject to change. The December runs are based on when it was loaded to Datamart. And it's based on the calendar for the payroll Workday processing calendar. But here's a sample period end date for December is 12/31 for both run 1 and run 2. The period end date is 12/31 for run 1, 1/31 for run 2. But the report effective date is when it loaded to Datamart. And so this has got all of the scheduled or in the first 2 cases, or actually first 3 cases when it actually loaded. And we've got all year on the calendar that we're going to send out shortly. So we've got the website for info on the project and any updates. And if you have any more questions, please update the project team or myself. Any questions?
Jennifer, David Droman said it would be helpful to have a Hummingbird macro for the 54 screen. Can you jot down his name or?
I will do that. And I will connect him with one of the people we worked with that uses Hummingbird. So.
And I actually had a question. On the previous slide, can you remind me what do the initials CE, I'm sorry, one more slide, CECD, what do those stand for?
I'm going to let Seth answer that. I have no idea.
Oh. It's cost based off of earnings and then cost based off of deductions. So it's a way to be able to get an employees, as a lot of people call it, OPE, other payroll expenses. The deductions refers to things that are employer costs for PERS and taxes and what have you.
That makes sense because the report is called cost earnings, cost deductions. So thank you for that. Okay, any other questions?
Oh, we just had one come in. What is the best way to create a report to tie out the PS with SFMS and Workday?
I'm assuming personal service with SFMS and Workday.
Elizabeth, can you just give us a thumbs up if you're referring to personal service? Okay, let me see if I can.
Okay,
get-
thumbs up. So yeah, that would be that report I talked about back here, which is the Workday. Well, the table is Workday cost, earnings, cost deductions, but a copy of the report that I've set up is out there under Workday cost, earnings, and deductions. So, and that is just the Workday side of it. So that should help you tie to what came into SFMA.
It looks like she might have some additional questions. Let me see if I can unmute her mic for you.
Okay.
Elizabeth, you should be able to unmute your mic now.
No, I can't.
Oh, there you
Oh,
are.
there we go.
Yeah.
There I go. I'm here. I've found that to run it for December 31st for my report to tie, because it looks like run 2 is posting to January.
Yes,
in Workday?
per the period date.
Right.
So
So-
for and you're with
I'm with Heck.
Okay. So I don't think you guys are an agency that posts forward for run 2, if I remember correctly. So that's where for SFMA, it does, the period end date is 12/31. However, for the period date for Data Mart, on the report that I was talking about, it is split. So the report effective date is what's really going to give you the run 1 versus run 2, and you can pull multiple. You can actually filter based on 2 effective report effective dates.
Okay, because I did create a formula to add those 2 together to tie to SFMA, but going forward, you'd be constantly editing the formula to add the 2 periods together.
Yeah,
So I was seeing if there was an easier way.
Those. Yeah, it has to do with those report effective dates.
Okay.
So, any other questions? Okay. Well, we're going to move on to Seth, and I'll let him take control. Welcome, Seth.
Thanks. Okay, I just have a update just overall related to the project. So this will just be one slide. Again, we've got some enterprise comms that we've sent out here recently. I think the biggest thing on people's minds is regarding just under overpayments. Our priority has been and always will be underpayments. We're working through those particular cases to be able to resolve them and issue payments as quickly as possible. Overpayments, we're identifying those and then working with the agencies to be able to get those adjustment entries inputted, and then we'll be able to work through the CBA language to work with the employee on repayment agreements. So direct deposit. So the account numbers, there was a data conversion issue when we first launched. We corrected all that, and then we updated and validated a couple different times to be able to ensure what came over from OSPA, the system of record at the time, was loaded into Workday. In particular, one thing regarding, I think I'll get to it. Yeah. And then, of course, mid-month compensation changes. This is a current issue we're still dealing with. So what ends up happening is employees who have a mid-month compensation change. So if they have a step increase, in particular in the middle of a month, basically if it's not on the first or the last day of the month, then there are some issues currently happening with underpayments. So we are having IBM and Workday and others be able to look into that, dive into it to provide some resolution on that particular issue. So we have daily stand-up meetings with payroll partners to be able to provide them updates, and also just be able to give an open forum to be able to provide questions that we're capturing and going back to work through and provide answers on. We are focused on a small group right now that we're getting some additional feedback on to provide some additional training. It'll be basically a train the trainer approach for payroll folks to be able to provide some additional insight and guidance and just walk through some particular scenarios with them to then take that information and work with in their agency or bring in other payroll partners to be able to have some training involved with that. Let's see, payments out of Workday. So this is more of a education and really understanding how Workday operates when it comes to payments out of Workday. So each particular payment is unique, and it treats it as its own separate payment. So what's different about that is for run 1 and run 2, OSPA handled it in one pay period, and it just basically accumulated all the information and adjustments all into the same period. Workday treats each payment at its own, meaning that if I get paid $2,500 or $5,000, whatever, on run 1, it takes those taxable wages and all that stuff based off of that information. If I get a mid-month for, say, like $500, that treats it as its own taxable wages, $500, and would tax it appropriately. So it's a little bit different dynamic, and that we're going to have additional communication in regards to that. In addition, fixed deposits, direct deposits. So if you have, in particular, a few different direct deposits set up, the order does matter for within Workday, and the order in which they're set up, it'll actually start through the process and apply the wages to be paid in the order set up in Workday. However, the caveat with that is your net deposit will always be last within Workday. So there's no way to put your net deposit at the top. So a couple things, examples to think about is if you have deposits set up for IRA contributions outside or Oregon College Savings Plan, we would recommend you actually shift those payments to actually come directly from your personal banking account and not have it run through ACH direct deposit within Workday. And then the data mart, we are having some initial discussions regarding the data mart, and thankfully Jennifer and SFMA are doing a little bit of lift there. We really appreciate that as far as crosswalks, date parameters, and be able to get into a little more of the what is the information that's coming across in the data mart and how does that relate to what you're used to seeing. So those are kind of the biggest things currently that we're dealing with. So I see a couple of questions in here. So when Workday transactions error in RStars, is there a process to correct it in Workday where the correction will then subsequently interface to RStars? So depending on the error and depending on what it is, for instance, if it's related to things either hitting a wrong PCA or index or project or grant, then you can update it within Workday, and then that should pick up on the following payroll run. Will the Workday payroll lock dates be added to the SMA calendar? So the lock date, so if you're referring to time tracking, so time tracking for December, we did lock it down for employees, which is very similar to what we did in e-payroll. So when the month closes, so to speak, when we've complete run 2, in a month, we do plan to lock time out. It doesn't mean you can't go back and make adjustments. You'd have to work with payroll to be able to do those adjustments. So can you repeat what you said about retirement and call-in savings contributions? So yeah, so this relates to fixed deposits. So again, if you have fixed deposits that are set up in Workday to go to those particular accounts, it will happen with each type of payment issued out of Workday. So if you're an employee who regularly gets run 2 payments, it'll go in the order they're set up in Workday. So we would recommend that if you do have things for IRA contributions or Oregon College Savings Plan, you should actually set those up through your personal bank account to be able to have those sent there, and you can adjust the timing and frequency within your own personal bank account. And yes, there'll be more communication going out regarding this particular piece regarding direct deposits, and just some education, further education on just kind of Workday as a whole. And that communication has not gone out. We are currently crafting it and going through the review process.
All right, are there any more questions for Seth? Fabiola, I did want to pass one of these questions on to you. The question was whether these lock dates will be added to the SFMA calendar.
Yeah, Julie, I was thinking that too, and I was going to,
Yeah,
we'll come back
Fabiola,
and, go ahead.
I think, sorry, I just to say, I think Fabiola, you and I can talk about that, and we can talk about what that really means, because again, ultimately, this is no different than what happened during e-payroll after run 2 is time was locked. So, and you just had to work with your payroll partner to make any adjustments afterwards. So it'll be the same process within Workday.
Okay, that sounds good, Seth.
All right. We did have another question come in. Would additional tax withholding also do the same as the IRAs?
Yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that, Heather. E-payroll had costing. So e-payroll, you were able to do costing adjustments, through either projects, grants, or cost centers. So.
Are there any more questions before we let Seth go? All right, looks like you're off the hook for now, Seth. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks.
We're going to move on now to Oregon Buys, and Nicole Brazil has graciously agreed to join us. Hi, Nicole.
Good morning. Good morning. Let me take control of the deck here. Perfect. Okay, well, good morning. So I want to present a few things about what's going on with the Oregon Buys project. So let's dive right in. As folks may know, we have the second phase of our project is underway. We have the state agencies broken up into 3 separate waves, and wave 1 has implemented. We're now working with wave 2 of the state agencies. And so the activities that we've done so far, we've gone through the process design workshops with those agencies and done the data collection. So collecting their new users, their kind of department and location. Oops, someone else just took control. Let me take that back.
I apologize for that, Nicole. We're having an issue with the slides being advanced for some of the attendees.
Sorry about that. Is that showing correctly now?
Right now, we are looking at slide 13.
Interesting. I am showing 15. Can I maybe ask you to move it to slide 15 for me?
I think that's the quickest way to go.
Thank you.
And if you do not see slide 15 at this point, please let me know in the chat. Go ahead.
I do not. I see slide 13, actually.
Oh, seriously? And still?
Yes. Yep, and it looks like Alan is saying the same thing, slide 13.
Right. Let me reset.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just jump in. Sorry about that. Sometimes that happens when different people take control. So we'll just have Julie just kind of reset the whole deck and see if we can go from there. So yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, we just have to forward through the.
Okay. How is it looking now, Nicole?
It's showing 15 to me. I don't know if everybody else sees the same thing, but it looks like it's correct now to me.
All right. If you do not see slide 15, please let us know. There's some thumbs up. Thank you very much. Nicole, do you want to take control or do you want me just to advance?
If you just want to advance, maybe that's the safer way.
We got it.
Okay, so as I was saying, so we've gone through the process design and the data collection efforts with the Wave 2 agencies. So we've collected details about their new users, their department location hierarchy, and their ship to bill to addresses. So we are now working on a couple of things. We actually have meetings going right this very moment this morning on both of these. So we're doing process validation with the agencies that started in mid-January. And that includes validating the business processes, running through those in the testing environment and making sure that they are going to meet the agency's needs. And it also includes testing the R-Stars interface, so the interface between Oregon Buys and R-Stars for their agency to make sure that everything is working correctly there. So that validation effort is underway. And then we have started the facilitated trainings. Those started at the end of January. They run through until I believe early March. Those activities, that training activity is available to the Wave 2 agencies, but it's also available to the agencies that implemented in Wave 1. So if any of those Wave 1 users, either maybe they're new staff and they didn't get to go through the first time, or they just want to sit through as a refresh, that's available for those Wave 1 agencies to attend as well. Okay, if you want to move to the next slide. So this just gives some more information about those virtual training sessions. So the registration is open now through Workday, and we have this information on our training webpage. We've got a hyperlink provided here in the slide deck. The way that these are broken out, they're facilitated online training courses, and they're broken out by role. So we have one for the accounts payable role, one for the basic purchasing role, which is like the procurement professional role. And then department access would be those folks that are either contract shoppers or submitting requisitions. So as I mentioned, again, this is available for Wave 1 and Wave 2 agencies. The registration is in Workday, and this training page on our project site has all the details. We also have some self-guided courses and some instruction guides that are all available on that same project page, and that's what that hyperlink is here. Wonderful. So this is our timeline overview. So I mentioned we're in phase 2. We're working with Wave 2 right now. And then we have Wave 3 coming up. So I apologize, the little red today indicator, I think needs to be moved a little bit. We're in February, if you can believe it. So we are going through that Wave 2 testing and validation work right now. And then you can also see above that, we have our Wave 2 end user training. Our Wave 3 actually kicks off April 12th. So we have a little bit of overlap between Wave 2 and Wave 3. The go live for Wave 2 is scheduled for May 2nd. And then we'll work with the Wave 3 agencies on the same activity. So we'll go through process design, we'll go through testing and validation with them, training, and then the Wave 3 go live is set for September 19th, and then the project is set to completely close out on Halloween, end of October. And this is just some statistics. These are the usage statistics from August 1st, which was the Wave 1 go live implementation date. Through present. So we have seen 12 agencies processing almost 1,600 requisitions through the system. We have seen, again, 12 agencies processing 1,445 POs through the system, and we have seen 638 invoices processed. So totaling 8.1 million through the system so far. So we're really excited about that. And at this point, I'll pause and see if there are any questions from the group.
Thank you, Nicole. I haven't had any typed into the chat at this point. I'll give everybody about 3 seconds here if you have a question while Nicole's with us. Otherwise, I would assume that they can always contact the Oregon Buys team.
Absolutely. You can either send us an email or just reach out to me, and we're happy to answer any questions that folks have.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Nicole.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too. All right, at this point, we're going to go ahead and move on to Carlene Hancock, who is going to cover the 1099 updates and how that process is going this year.
Good morning. Julie, are you going to remain moving the slides?
I can, if you'd like me to.
I think I don't want to lose anyone for the coming events. So it's 1099. It was great this year. We only had 64 changes requested on the 1099 miscellaneous, primarily box 10 and box 3. Box 10, of course, being our lawyers, and box 3 being the other income. 11 changes to NEC, and then we produced 1,424 without any changes at all for the miscellaneous, with a total of 1,488 sent out, I believe, on the 31st. 1099 NECs were 11 changes were requested. 8,795 were without any changes at all, which is fantastic for that number. And then 8,806 were sent out in the mail. Next. Now the timeline's coming up. Most of these don't apply to you because a lot of the agencies have done all their work and won't see any change requests needed. But in case you do, these are the timelines for the next 3 months. In February, we have one coming up this Thursday for any changes or corrections needed on 1099 NECs and miscellaneous. Then again on the 23rd, again, changes or adjustments to the miscellaneous and NEC forms. And then we will report any of the updates to the 1099 NEC corrections to the IRS, as that file has already been originally submitted in January. In March, again, March 9th is going to be any corrections or revised miscellaneous. The 23rd, and then on the 29th, we are submitting for the first time the miscellaneous file and, of course, the NEC corrected file. Then, as needed or if needed at all, April 6th, the last NEC corrections and miscellaneous corrections. On the 20th, if any corrections at all, will be printed and produced and mailed. And this is our final submission, planned submission out the door. And then 4/27, we will, if needed, if there are no corrections, it's not needed. If there are corrections, we will do it. Submit back to the IRS these corrections. And then that pretty much wraps up the 1099 season, and that's what's coming up on the schedule. Do you have any questions?
We did have a request that for our first-time participants, would you please explain the SFMS's 1099 responsibility from start to finish? What is the SFMS responsibility for 1099s versus the agencies?
Agency's responsibility is basically to make sure that the information is correct on the 1099s presented. They do that by reviewing their reports in the months preceding the January or December month-end close, where the final reports are created. And those reports are the DAFR 7920, which correlates to the 1099 miscellaneous, or the DAFR 79 NE20, which correlates to the 1099 NEC. If there are corrections found, or if any questions arise from 1099s going out that I can't answer, I will send my agency contacts who, let's see, about November, I requested updated contact information from the agency. So I have my contact list for 1099 specifically. And I send to the contacts any questions that come in and arise from phone calls that I can't answer. So far, I've sent out a grand total of 3 after receiving more than 100 phone calls in the last 3 days. So phone volume has been tremendous on this, but not I would say about the same as last year. So always the first week after 1099s land in their post office is where I get the majority of phone calls. They tapers off quickly.
Thank you, Carla.
Yes. Okay, so our stars is highlighting of the screen. The D36 screen is going to be done by Maria Berglund.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm taking control. Hi, everybody. Good morning. We are going to talk about the 36 Agency Code 3 profile. Please let me know if you guys see my slide when I advanced. Okay, great. Okay, let's start. Our STARS 13 screen use 4 items to match and process deposit reconciliation. And these 4 items are agency number, deposit number, amount, and Oregon State Treasury account number. So as you see, Oregon State Treasury account number is one of the key elements in order to our stars be able to process the reconciliations. So D36 Agency Code 3 profile is used to retrieve that Treasury account number for the deposit reconciliation. And Treasury system requires 10-digit number to post agency's transaction to correct Treasury fund. And how that formatted, it is 3-digit agency number, 2 zeros, and 5-digit account number. And here's an example of a D36 screen. Just visually, you can see we have agency number, 3-digit, for us is 107. Agency code 3, in this example, is for general fund review. And as you see, it is a 00401, which kind of similar exact as Treasury fund, which is 0401. So process to establishing in this D36 profile, agency must establish a Treasury account number, and in the D36 agency code, a 3 profile. Treasury use the Treasury account number to post the deposit to the correct Treasury fund, but that's not related to D23 fund. That Treasury fund doesn't identify the D23 fund in our stars. It is the agency's classification structure entered in the deposit transaction determines the R stars D23 fund. So make sure you keep them separate. They are not same. D36 purposes, the agency code 3 only used in R stars to create the match on a 12 screen. So the key to the D36 profile is agency number and agency code 3. So the agency code 3 field is 6 digits in length with trailing spaces allow. This then allows our stars to generate the T code 332 to affect the 007T, which is the cash on deposit with Treasury. The agency code 3 field is required on all transactions subject to the deposit reconciliation process, any transaction impacting GL0065. But with all that, we have a couple limitations. First limitation we have with agency code 3 is that 28A screen, T code screen does not restrict the agency code tree field. With that, that means user has to be remembered to put in the agency code tree on the transaction. And if the user forgets to put the agency code tree on the transaction, the person would not receive an error from the T code that was used in transaction. So that will create unmatched. That means on 12 screen, we will have 2 transactions. If that happens, then agency needs to reverse the transaction in error with no agency code tree, then re-enter the correct transaction with agency code tree in order to system be able to match with treasury side transaction. The second limitation is agency code tree is not an enterable in all our data entry screens. As you see here, I listed some of them. Screen 504, which is revenue, receipts, transaction entry, allows you manually enter the agency code tree. 505 pre-encumbrance allows the users to enter the agency code tree. But as you see, 506, a single vendor or multiple vendor fast entry entry screens doesn't allow to users enter that agency code trees. That's in order to import that agency code tree, user can use 26 profile or 24 profile for the transaction to look up and bring in the agency code tree. And that can be used for all screens. Just make sure identify the agency code tree on the related PCA screen 26 screen or index screen 24 screen. So as soon as you save the transaction will bring in look up for that agency code tree via that screens. We have more in-depth information in our desk manual 301. And here's the link to our website. Any questions?
We have not had any questions come in, Maria. Thank you for covering that screen highlight.
Thank you. And please feel free to reach out to your agency analyst if you run into any questions on this regard. Okay, we have one.
Hi, I'm Juan Moraver, and I will just show you a couple of slides with information regarding the payment control and cancel archive. I'm going to take control here, okay, just to move the slides. See. So what is the payment archive? Archive of warrant records, the expired warrants, warrants canceled before July 1st, 2020, warrants stopped before July 1st, 2020, warrants to redeem before July 1st, 2020. What else should you guys know about the archives? Are we okay with the slides? Julie?
Yes, as far as I know.
Oh, okay. I thought I saw a message there. Okay,
Yep,
okay, so this year the archive will be on Thursday, February 23rd. There should be no system downtime. There is no agency responsibility for this archive. The most visible change will be on 44 and 47 screens. Archived warrants will not be accessible. This archive is necessary to maximize system efficiency and minimize data storage needs. And payment archive questions. Any questions?
We do not have questions at this time. Thank you very much, Juan.
Right.
Fabiola, did you want to go ahead and take a break now?
Julie, no, I think we wait until after the financial archive,
All right.
and then we'll take a break. Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Alan with Financial Archive.
Thank you, Juan. Morning, everyone. So hopefully you're seeing slide number 39, the Financial Archive. Okay. So this year with the Financial Archive, there's no responsibility for agencies. You don't need to do anything to prepare other than to be aware of the downtime. For the system, Friday, April 7th is when we're going to run the archive this year. And Friday will be a normal day. We'll have an expedite cycle at noon as usual. The financial archive jobs begin after the normal nightly batch cycle. Then on Saturday, April 8th, we begin our verification process. And so the IT file, the 530 screen, will have a message that reads that the IT file is closed. So what does that mean when the, then on Monday, April 10th, we will not have an expedite cycle on that day. Once again, the 530 screen will have the message that the IT file is closed until we can complete our validation and open the system back up again. We plan to run a batch cycle Monday evening, and we'll communicate our progress as we're able to during the day. So when the IT file is closed, agencies can view or update profile screens. They use financial inquiry and drill down screens. What you cannot do is create, edit, or release batches. Now, there's a few agencies, I believe 3 agencies that are currently using AdPix. So when the IT file is closed in RStars, that does affect what you can do in AdPix. So you can create purchase orders and direct vouchers, other documents, but you cannot send those transactions over to RStars. So when the IT file is closed, you will receive the message, RStars system not available, document not posted. So once we send out the SFMS news that the IT file is open, then you can go back into AdPix and send across any batches that you need to. So this table here shows the financial tables that are part of the Financial Archive. So this year we'll be archiving financial data through fiscal year 19, except for those tables that have are protected by capital construction. The vast majority of agencies do not have any capital construction. But there's about 20 agencies, I believe, that do have certain records protected. We'll get into an example in a bit. So this shows the affected tables and RStars screens and whether that screen is impacted by capital construction. For example, the cash control screen, that screen is not protected for any capital construction records. The inactive accounting event, the 84 screen, that is protected by capital construction. So you could see older records, still existing out there after the archive, and that would tell you that it was a capital construction record that was protected. Now, when records are archived from RStars, then they go to an equivalent table in Obi-Wan to be held for an additional 2 years. So, for example, the document financial records will go to a table called SFMS Archived Document Financial. General ledger goes to SFMS archived GL detail, and so on. Now, there were 13 tables that are part of the financial archive. As you can see, there's only 7 listed here. Not all of the tables have an equivalent in the data mart. So that's why you're not seeing all 13 of them. So here's an example of a record actually has an effective date in 2014, the appropriation year of 2015. And you may be questioning, well, why is this record still on our system? So in order to find that out, we need to go look at the fund, which is, I believe it's 1589 in this case. So if we look at the D23 profile for Fund 1589, and I'm afraid this is too small, I can't read it. You see there's a field called appropriated fund that says 3020. So any appropriated fund that ends in 20, there are 3020, 4020, 6020, and 8020. Those are the 4 possibilities. Those are an indicator that that is capital construction funds. And so these potentially would still be remaining on the system after the financial archive. And here is the profile that we set up centrally and monitor and maintain. It's called RTCC, Retain for Capital Construction. And in this example, what it shows for key 2 is 2015. So appropriation year 2015 is protected by this RTCC profile. And that's why I'll go back here and to this example. That's why this AY15 transaction is still on our system. It was not archived because it is still being protected for this agency. And this is just a graph showing, giving a sense of how many records are on our system related to these financial tables. As you can see, we have in total, apologize, I can't, this slide is too small it looks like close to 900 million records amongst the 13 tables that were there before we ran the archive last year. So if we were not running this archive every year, obviously we would have many, many more records in our system, and the system would not be responsive. So that's one of the key reasons that we perform this archive every year. Any questions about the financial archive?
We have not had any questions, but thank you very much, Alan. And Fabiola, how long would you like to run the break for?
Yeah, let's do 5 minutes because I know we have quite a bit to come back to. So it is 10:03, so we will restart at 10:08. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Robert Otero, I'm working on making you a presenter for our user group today. If you could please type something into the chat so that I can pick up your name. You are not listed on my attendee list at this point. I think it cuts off at 95. So if you could just type into chat, and hopefully that'll give me a way to pick up your name.
Okay, Julie, it's 10:08 on my computer. Welcome back, everybody. We will start the second half of our presentation. Juan, are you ready to take control?
I think I am, yes.
All right.
All right, so let's start. I'm gonna take control. Okay, life of a warrant. Well, again here, this time I will be presenting you with the life of a warrant. I will start by giving you the warrant count for the calendar year 2020. Warrants printed were 284,331. Out of those warrants, 20,200 were returned back to the agency. Warrants versus checks. Warrants are legally a request for payment by the holder of the warrant. Like a check, they represent a valid and legal claim, but the payable is not payable on demand like a check. A warrant is payable if funds are available to pay. If funds are not available, the warrant is payable with the next available funds. The life of a warrant starts with the agency making an expenditure. The system prints a remittance advice with a warrant. The remittance advice includes the agency number, invoice number, and invoice description entered on the transaction entry screen. Warrants are printed at publishing and distribution each weekday morning. When the payee receives the warrant, different actions, all warrants with a payment distribution type, PDT, specifying return to agency will be delivered to the agency in the mail shuttles. Publishing and distribution mails the remaining warrants directly to the warrant payee. When the payee receives the warrant, different actions can happen. The warrant can be redeemed, canceled, stopped, expired, fraud, encoding error, forfeited, counterfeit, and some other actions. And I will give you a brief explanation of each one of them. Redeem warrant. Most commonly, the payee will redeem the warrant. Warrants remain in I status until they are either redeemed or canceled. Redeemed status changes to P, canceled status changes to C, and the WC or CC cancellation document number shows in the upper right corner on the 44 screen. When agency staff determine a warrant should be canceled, they write cancel on the warrant and complete the form they downloaded from the web. The reason codes are listed on the back on the back side of the form, and the form you can find it on the website just below. Some of the actions or different reasons codes to cancel a warrant are incorrect vendor ID, incorrect amount, unable to deliver warrant, duplicate payment, duplicate run, and others. If you're not familiar where to find the cancellation stop form, this slide will show you the path or the link to the SFMS website, the SFMS forms and guidance. On this slide, I'm not going to go over into the details with this slide, but here's where you as an agency will make the decision to cancel or stop a warrant. This slide walks you through the key decision points and provides appropriate action. SFMS expires warrants annually. The funds become available to the payee through Oregon State Treasury and Claim Property section. The payee can file a claim for payment of an expired warrant and then later find the expired warrant and bank it, resulting in a double payment. Outstanding warrants over 2 years old will be marked as expired on Monday, July 18. Agencies are responsible for ensuring these warrants are still owed to the payee when they are reported to Oregon State Treasury on September 30th. If they are no longer owed, the agency is responsible to request a stop payment or cancellation before the warrant is allowed to expire. Final DAFR XRR3 report will be produced on July 18 with a night batch cycle and ready for agencies to view online the next day. This report will contain the warrants that have been expired. Warrants on this report will have an E in the payment status field on the 44 screen. A stop payment warrant may redeem on the same day of processing the stop. A stop payment warrant may redeem in error. A stop payment warrant may redeem after 24 months effective period lapses. Fraudulent redemption warrants may include warrants with an altered amount or counterfeit check. These create a mismatch during the redemption batch cycle. Treasury can initiate return of fraudulent items caught within 24 hours after receiving redemption information. An encoding error occurs when the bank redeems the warrant for an amount different from the amount issued or redeems in the wrong fund under $5. We do not send a transfer request for amounts below $5 unless it is part of the multi-fund warrant. SFMS writes off these general fund errors at the end of a biennium. If a redemption error occurs for more than $5, a fund transfer or expire reimbursement request is processed. A counterfeit warrant is an unauthorized warrant that redeems as an original. You will discover it to be a counterfeit item by inspecting the image. The image will include the 10501 account number, but may not have the appearance of a state-issued P&D publishing and distribution warrant. This slide, you will find some of the different screens useful to research a warrant. Each screen requires different type of information to find what you need. On screen 37, you need the agency number and document number. On screen 44, you need the warrant number. On screen 47, you also need the warrant number. Screen 85, you need vendor number and document type. On screen 86, you need the agency number and document number. On screen 87, you need the agency, the vendor, and the mail code numbers and the fiscal year. And this is the end of my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you, Juan. There is a question. Is there recourse if a warrant is cashed when a stop was put on it? I had that happen at a previous job and the bank told us because it was deposited electronically, the check paid. And I'm going to go ahead and field this if you don't mind, Juan. Elizabeth, I would recommend that you contact your agency support analyst, and we can work with Treasury to see if there is recourse on that situation or not.
Thank you, Julie. And I believe Jennifer is next. Let me move my. Okay, yes, Jennifer, it's your turn.
Hi. Okay. So we're going to talk about the profile role, the DAFM 355. Sorry, let me take control. There we go. Okay, so it is currently scheduled to run on April 19th of this year. It will create the new profiles for FY24 and FY25, as well as AY25. And it will not create new profiles for profiles that your agency no longer needs. So let's look at how it works. Which profile screens are involved? How does the system determine which agency profiles to roll? What will the new profiles look like? We'll talk about some examples. What do I need to do at my agency? And important reminders and helpful hints. Okay, so the profile screens that are involved there's currently 11 for the AY key, and that's appropriation, which is the 20, 21 index PCA relationship, 22 cost allocation, 24 index code, 26 program cost account, 82 comptroller relationship, D03 organization code, D04 program code, D09 comptroller source group, and D10 comptroller object, and D11 agency object. So the profile screens that are involved for the FY key are the D23 fund and the D73 cash fund. So the system determines which agencies to roll based on the profiles key AY or FY must be equal to the current values on the 97 screen. And we'll talk about the 97 screen in a bit. The status code must be active, and the effective end date must be blank or greater than 06/30/2023. This prevents old or unnecessary profiles from being created for the next AY. So it determines this based on the 97 screen. This is a screen that SFMA maintains. And let's see. Sorry, I've got some notes on another screen, so I'm flipping back and forth. Okay, so the profile role program, the new AY profiles. What do the new profiles look like? The AY profiles will have one new record created. The AY will be 2025. The effective start date will be 07/01/2023, and the effective end date will either be blank if it was previously blank, or it will be 3 years greater than the date on the current profile, except the 20 appropriation profiles, which will be 12/31/2025. What will the new profiles look like? FY profiles will have 2 records created, one with an FY of 2024 and one with an FY of 2025, both with an effective start date of 07/01/2023, and both with an effective end date the same as the current profile. So we've got an example of 2024 and 2025. Okay, so the questions to ask when you're looking at what the new profiles will be is it an AY or an FY profile? Is it for a current FY or AY per the 97 profile? Is it active? And is the effective end date blank or greater than 06/30/2023? On the 24 profile, an example would be an AY23 active 24 screen index profile with a blank effective end date, there would be one new profile for AY with an effective start date of 7/1/2023 and a blank effective end date. Sorry, bouncing back and forth between two screens so I can see my notes. Okay, some examples. Another example is an active FY 2023 D23 screen fund profile with a blank effective end date. You would get two profiles, one with a FY 24 with an effective start date of 7/1/2023 and a blank effective end date, and one with an FY 25 also starting with the effective start date of 7/1/2023 and a blank effective end date. An AY active 20 screen appropriation profile with an effective end date of 12/31/23, and that would create one profile for AY 25 with an effective start date of 7/1/2023 and an effective end date of 12/31/2025. Okay, so what do you need to do at your agency? Before April 19th, you're going to want to review your agency structure to determine what level of change needs to be made for AY 25. No changes, so there's a few options. There's no changes to the accounting structure. There's minor changes needed, including new appropriation numbers, or substantial changes needed and profiles need to be created or deleted. So, okay. So if you have no changes, then before the roll, just ensure that your necessary profiles are active and have an appropriate effective end date to generate the new profiles. After the roll, but before using the new profiles, review those and make changes to the titles as necessary. If you need minor changes, then before the roll, ensure that the necessary profiles are active. They have an appropriate effective end date to generate the new profiles. And then after the roll, but before using the new profile, review and make changes to titles as necessary. After the roll, but before using the new profiles, make any modifications as necessary. So, do I see a hand up?
No, we're good. Thanks.
Oh, okay. And for substantial changes, before the roll, you're going to want to inactivate or place an effective end date of less than 6/30/2023 on the profiles that to be deleted. They must not have balances. If they do, a profile will be needed for adjustments. After the roll, profiles must be returned to their original configuration to allow transactions to process. And then also after the roll, agency will need to establish any new agency profiles and complete or submit appropriate forms for SFMS to set up D23 fund and D73 cash fund profiles. Reminders and helpful hints. Before July 1st of 2023, agencies will need to set up two new 25 screen agency control profiles, one for FY24 and one for FY25. You'll need to review the 91 screen report request profiles and decide if dates will need to be changed or new profiles created. Review the 550 screen recurring transaction profiles. Will new profiles need to be created to accommodate changes to accounting structure? And changes to profile data elements must not be made once the profile has been used. If you have any questions, please contact your SFMA analyst. There is a link in the slideshow to the desk manual for the profile role and the new biennium. Looks like a question. Can we set the new control files up anytime before July 1st? I think so. Alan, is that correct? Does that sound correct?
That does sound correct to me, yes.
Okay. Just thought I'd make sure.
Julie, does that sound right, that changes to profiles could be made anytime before July 1st? Or actually, before the profile roll runs on April 19th?
My apologies. I've been handling some technical issues, so I haven't kept up with the content going on.
Hi, Julie.
Barbara,
I can jump in. Yes, the agencies can go ahead and set those up anytime before July 1st. You don't have to wait until the profile roll. You can do it before then, but you want to set it up before July 1st.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Liz.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions at all? Okay, moving forward to Liz with the program structure review.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. My name is Liz Schultz, and I'll be starting us off on the topic of program structure review. Now, program structure reviews are something that are done every 2 years to prepare for the start of a new biennium. So if you've been with the state, if you've attended our user groups for a while, we do this presentation every February before the start of the new biennium. So this will be review for you. If you have not used R-Stars before or haven't attended these trainings in the past, this may be new information. The key thing to remember is program structures, it's to prepare for the new biennium. You may not have to take any action if you're not planning on having any structure changes. So this is really focused on your planning to make changes to your accounting structure in R-Stars for AY25 is really who this is tailored towards. So we do reviews focused on those agencies that are going to be making changes from their existing account structure for AY25, and that's what these program structure reviews are. SABRS, the statewide audit and budget reporting section, and SFMS, our group, each has a role in this process. So today I'm going to give you an overview of the R-Stars program structure. I'm going to explain the associated responsibilities and timelines. And then I'll provide you with some recommended practices and tips to avoid some common pitfalls that we've seen in the past. Robert Otero from SABRS is also with us today, so he's going to be presenting a few additional slides to talk through the same information through a budget perspective. Okay, so what is R-Stars program structure? What do I mean when I say that? Program structure is what aligns information between the Orbit's budgeting system to the R-Stars accounting system. So there's common shared elements between both systems, and this allows that data to be aligned when you're trying to pull reports of budgets to actuals. Just an important note, whenever you're looking at program structure for your agency, make sure your agency budgeting and accounting groups are coordinating. They each have a piece of the process. There is the budget side, but you also need the accounting side so you can set things up correctly so your budget reporting will be accurate and you can easily track budget to actual information. This next slide may be familiar to you if you've been involved in this process in the past. This spreadsheet, everyone will have something like this that aligns the Orbit side to the R-Stars side for information. So SABRS maintains copies of the most recent version of these spreadsheets for each agency. So if you don't have a copy of yours and you need one, you can reach out to SABRS to get the most recent copy for your agency. And this structure alignment spreadsheet is the document that's used to align the two systems. So in the next few slides, I'm going to give you a little bit of a breakdown of the information that's contained on this spreadsheet. And we're going to use just a made-up agency, the Oregon Department of Weather, a very simple agency, to walk through this example. All right, so we're focusing on the left-hand side of the spreadsheet right now. This is the information that's contained in Orbits. So if you're familiar with some of those terms, you'll see the SCR and the DCR reporting levels, the Orbit's budget level number, and the Orbit's cross-reference number. So for this example that we have two major programs. We have the WIN program and the RAIN program. So this kind of breaks down what you would see on the left-hand side of this alignment spreadsheet. If we move to the right side, you'll see what's been set up on the R-Stars side. So we've got information that would be contained on the DO4 profile is displayed on the right-hand side of this spreadsheet here. So in this example, we've got program level 1 is the agency, the Department of Weather in this case. Program level 2 is the SCR level, the major program, the WIN program. We have program level 3 is the DCR level, so a sub-program of the WIN program. We have wind monitoring. And then levels 4 through 9 are optional. So this agency has level 4. You can go, R-Stars allows up to 9 levels, depending on how complex your agency structure may be. But agencies are required to have a one-to-one relationship between the R-Stars DO4 program code profile and the Orbit's XREF number down to the DCR level. So this example, the agency uses program level 4. They go one additional level because they want to break things out a little bit more for their reporting. So let's take a look at how one of these looks in R-Stars. So I've got a line highlighted here in red to focus in what this wind capture would look like in R-Stars on the DO4 screen. So if I look up this program code on the DO4 screen, it was the 1210 program code. It's program level 4. I can see the Orbit's X reference field is on the DO4 screen, so that's what's aligning those two systems. I also see at the bottom the program hierarchy, showing how this program rolls up within the agency. And then finally, at the bottom, we have the program code level of 4 is listed on here. So 1210 was level 4. It rolls up 1200 and then up to program level 2 for the higher level of the agency. So whenever you're looking at this spreadsheet, the Orbit's alignment spreadsheet, that structure alignment, if you're looking on the right-hand side, you should be able to look up the DO4s and see how they're set up. Now, another thing I want to mention is the DO4 screen is maintained by the SABRS group. So agencies cannot actually make changes in R-Stars to this screen. They can request changes to it, but all changes would be processed by the SABRS group. Now, we talked about setting up the program code, but how do you get that activity on an actual transaction? So we do this through the PCA profile, typically the 26 screen. So when you're setting up your PCAs, you want to make sure you have that correct program code on there and the correct program level. So in this example, we can see we've got program 1210 on this PCA, and we have got the program level of 4 on here so that it matches to what was on the DO4 screen. So then when you're coding transactions to this PCA, it's going to roll up and be reported against that program code. So you can be able to track budget to actual information and see what actual activity is for this program. So that's kind of an overview of what's meant by program structure in R-Stars. So let's talk a little bit about the responsibilities and timelines. So during March and April of this year, so in the next 2 months, take a look at your program structure, identify if you're going to be needing any changes to it in AY25. Maybe you decide you don't need any changes, you're just going to let AY23 profiles roll over in that profile role. And that's completely fine. You don't need to make any changes, and then we don't have to do a review because you're still using that same structure. If you do identify that you're going to need changes, changes could be a result of new legislation, or you may have an agency decision that you want to restructure. you want to notify Sabres and SFMS if you plan to have changes. So in March and April, take a look at that. Notify Sabres and SFMS, your analyst, if you do expect to have changes for AY25. And then you will submit any required documentation to Sabres. Robert will talk a little bit more about that in the next slides. And you want to copy your SFMS analyst to keep that in on the loop, because we're doing our reviews. We need to know what changes you're working with Sabres so that we can make sure we review your R-star structure and that it's set up appropriately. So in April and May, Sabres will review any agencies that have changes. They may come back to you if there's questions. They'll coordinate with the agency to get your DO4s corrected. Some of that timing is really important. We're doing our profile roll, as Jennifer mentioned, on April 19th. So you wouldn't actually make any changes to your PCAs. Sabres wouldn't be changing the DO4s until after that profile roll. But as soon as that profile roll is complete, you can start preparing your structure for AY25. So Sabres would set up any DO4s. If you have PCAs that point to those DO4s, agency should be deleting those first before Sabres deletes the related DO4 profiles. And then your DO4 profiles would be input during that April-May timeframe. So in May and June, agencies can take a look, make sure their DO4s for AY25 are set up as they expect, and then you can set up any PCAs that you need for AY25. As soon as you've finished setting up your structure, notify your SFMS analyst that your AY25 profiles are ready for review. So this is only if you have changes. If you don't have any changes, you don't have to do this. But if you are making changes, let your SFMS analyst know once you've completed those updates. And then SFMS, typically in June, is reviewing those updated DO4 and 26 profiles to make sure everything's set up, so you won't run into any errors when you're trying to post transactions. And we would be reaching out if we have any review comments for you to address during that time frame. And we're trying to get those reviews done before July 1st. So it's really important, this timing and responding to the analyst questions, so we can get all of those steps complete. I recognize sometimes you might be waiting on legislation and it can go a little bit longer, but the goal is to try to have your structure reviewed prior to the start of AY25 on July 1st, 2023. So these next few slides I'm going to talk through are just some good guidance. They're recommended practices to think about if you're going to be restructuring your agency, if you're setting up structure. These are things, they're not required, they're just recommended. We do have agencies that have different processes that meet their business needs, so you may not need to follow these, but these are just some good things to keep in mind. So the first tip would be try to keep your program codes in a logical numbering sequence. It just makes it easier for reporting. It just makes it easier to see how an agency's structure is set up if you're using a logical numbering sequence. So in this example, all program codes associated with the RAIN program, the agency is going to start those with a 2. And then all programs that relate to RAIN capture begin with a 2-2. So trying to keep that numbering intact. The second recommended practice is considering the use of budget-only PCAs. Sabres recommends setting separate PCAs that appropriation and allotment entries can be input on. You could set these up at a higher level so that you're not having to enter so many entries for appropriation and allotment. So in this example, this is a pretty simple one. We have the RAIN program. They have budget from one funding source in this example. So they set up a budget-only PCA that points to the program level 2000 as a budget-only PCA. So then appropriation allotment can be added at that level. And then when they're actually recording transactions, they're using lower level PCAs that point to lower level program codes. So all of their PCAs point to the lowest program code level 4. But since the budget was loaded at a higher level, they can all use that same budget. So that's just a good tip to reduce the number of PCAs and budget entries you may need to make. Another recommended practice is we recommend having all of your lowest level program codes end at the same level. This just makes it easy when you're setting up your PCAs. They're all going to use the same program code level. So for this example here, for consistency, the agency added in some program code levels so that they could have every program, both the WIN program and the RAIN program, ending at level 4 as the lowest level. Then when they set up their PCAs, they'll use program level 4 on all of their profiles. And then if they run reports, it'll make sure that they can consistently have that information. Again, not required, but a recommended practice to consider. The final recommended practice is just making sure that your agency budget level indicators on the 26 screen are matching to what is shown on the DO4 screen. There's no system edit that will prevent you from using a different budget level indicator on the 26 screen. This is something we look for when we're doing our program structure reviews. It's not required. We do have some agencies that have decided to have data summarized at a higher level. But it's something to just simplify the process if you have those two profiles in alignment for that level. The next few slides are just some tips to avoid some pitfalls we've seen before. So before I was talking about recommended practices, these ones are required to make sure that you don't have issues. If you don't follow this advice, it can result in the loss of accounting integrity and require a lot of work to clean up. Because the system won't post your transactions correctly. So one is make sure you're inactivating or deleting PCAs prior to inactivating or deleting the program code. So if you have a PCA that points to a program code that's active and you have Sabres delete that DO4 profile, RStars will still let you post transactions to that PCA, but they're not going to post to a program code because that program code is gone. So making sure that that's cleaned up, that's something we're looking for when we do our SFMS program structure reviews. Also, do not make changes to existing program codes or PCAs if they already have transactions posted to them. So if you make a change to your PCA profile, it's not going to go back and correct what already posted. It's just going to update it going forward. So don't make changes if there's already been transactions. We recommend you set something new and move activity over. If you have the situation where things have posted and it posted not the way you wanted them to, don't just change the profile. Reach out to your SFMS analyst and we can give you guidance on how to correct that. The third item is something Sabres is monitoring for. If they're updating higher level DO4 program codes and they're saving a change, they need to go through and make sure they're saving that change through the roll up too, so that everything rolls up correctly in the system. So when you're looking at your DO4s, once Sabres says they're all set up, you can take a look and make sure that they match what you expected. And SFMS is also reviewing this when we do our reviews. And the final tip here is don't delay on finalizing your AY25 program structure. Many of these pitfalls can be avoided if SFMS can complete this review before the start of July 1. You know, so, like I mentioned, some delays may be outside of your control if you're waiting for new legislation, but trying to get your structure set up and ready to go and giving SFMS the chance to review it in June before you start using it will make sure you won't have those issues where transactions aren't properly posting for the new AY. So AY25 program structure reviews, SFMS will conduct a full or partial review of agency structure depending on the extent of the changes. So if you're going to have changes, let us know. If there's no changes, we won't do a review for your agency. So during those reviews, we're verifying the DO4 screens match that alignment spreadsheet. We're looking that the program code hierarchy is correctly established. We're making sure that your PCAs have been established and have all the appropriate indicators on them. And if that they're inactivated if appropriate. So if you have any questions, please let your SFMS agency support analysts know. We'll be reaching out to get more information if we know that you're going to be having changes. Keep us in the loop when you're notifying Sabres if you're going to have changes, so we can make sure everything gets set up smoothly if you're going to be restructuring or if you have new legislation that requires new accounting structure. All right. If you have questions, go ahead and type them in the chat. I am going to turn it over now to Robert Otero from Sabres to talk a little bit more about this same topic.
All right, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you, Robert.
Okay. All right. I'm Robert Otero with Sabres. And today I'll just be going over a little bit of the structure side from the Sabres side, or budget side, I should say. Julie, it looks like I can't switch the slides over.
All right, I will move them for you then, Robert.
Okay, perfect. All right, ready for the next slide. Okay, what actions require program changes? And from the budget perspective is some of these might happen. Agency budget needs may change throughout the biennium. And now that we're in session, we may have some from CFO or LFO directed changes, and as well as legislative changes that happen throughout session. This could be based on policy decisions, new legislation, new programs, or changes to existing programs. So some of these you'll may be able to address now, some of these you'll have to address later on throughout session, but like Liz said, we want to get through the majority of your new structure setup that and finalize before the July 1st. All right, next slide. I think I lost my place here. I kind of went over this a little bit, sorry. But yes, required documentation. The orbits to R-STARS alignment spreadsheet, and you saw that earlier in Liz's presentation. What we would need to do is we do not need you to update the spreadsheet each biennium unless you're making changes to it. So we do have some that are a little bit older, so we do keep them on record, like Liz said. But we just keep updating that. So any kind of changes, it's good to send that into Sabres that you're going to be making. We'll require that for new changes, but if you don't have one, we do have records if you guys have any questions on what your current structure looks like. We do use the Sabres and SFMS does use their spreadsheet to review any changes. What you'll want to include is all your current 21-23 structure orbits, cross references, and DO4s, and any proposed new changes for the 23-25 biennium. Next slide. Here's an example of your spreadsheet. And this is something Liz kind of already went over. We do on this spreadsheet ask that you guys put some comments, highlight if possible. Here's a good example of things like you might be changing, changes to titles, any kind of new program codes. If you highlight it, it's easier for us to kind of see what's going on and put as many notes as possible for any kind of changes. If you have any questions, you could go ahead and put questions in your comment section as we review those. It's definitely very helpful for Sabres when we're reviewing it. and SFMS as well. Okay, one more thing on this. You can see where the SCR, if you look at the program level B on the orbit side, that is usually the SCR level, and that aligns with program level 3. What Sabres asks for any new setups as well, if you align your SCR levels at the with the level 3 program code, and then DCRs could be lower level. It definitely helps when certain types of legislation may be an agency-wide. They don't specify by program, for example. And if you do have a structure where you have the program level 2 aligning with your SCRs, what happens sometimes is if you get a new appropriation and it's agency-wide, and you have, for example, 2 programs, and they're both set up at the program level 2, we could only post the budget to one of those programs if your SCRs are set up at the level 2. So if you do have if you do review your spreadsheet and see that your agency may not have changes based on legislation, but you do see your SCRs levels are set up at level 2, that might be a good time to take a look at and send in a change for best practices. You may not need it now, but in the future, if you were to get a budgeted an agency-wide appropriation, it could pose some potential posting problems for budget and SFMS as well. We don't keep necessarily track of agencies that have those, but if you're a smaller level agency that may have only one SCR and it's at the program level 2, we could go ahead and fix that now. So in the future, if your agency was to get a new program and it would require a new SCR, we could take care of that sooner rather than later, so there's no posting problems in the future. Next slide. All right, here's just a few deadlines to go over. If you can notify Sabres by March 24th at our orbits.help email address that your agency will have program structure changes will be needed. It kind of helps set us up to prepare for our workload in Sabres, especially during this time where we kind of had a shortened time frame with the governor's budget being released a little later than usual based on the new governor's budget. So that will help prioritize our work. And if you have any big changes expected, you definitely want to let us know sooner, so we could take a look at those or maybe help work through those as best as possible. If you could provide Sabres by May 1st or sooner with alignment spreadsheet displaying the changes as needed, we could start reviewing those. So that way, when the profile roll happens on April 19th, Sabres is already ready. We've reviewed what we had to do, and you've worked with your accounting shop as well as SFMS as much as possible, and we can load those a lot faster. And of course, as soon as possible, if there is any changes based on legislation, you'll want to let Sabres know as soon as possible. We understand that there's going to be last-minute changes that may require new program codes, especially towards the end of session. So just want to let Sabres know as soon as possible, and definitely keep your accounting side in the loop so we could expedite any of those changes as best as possible. Next slide. Again, we kind of already went over this a little bit, but you want to notify Sabres and SFMS analysts of any pending changes. You should also include your accounting shop as well. Again, these changes best if you keep your accounting side in the loop. It saves us from savers from maybe missing a little bit on the accounting piece, and it will help your agency to get set up without any potential hiccups once July 1st hits. Savers will review requested changes, alignment with orbits. Again, if you could highlight and make comments, as many comments as possible. And then afterwards, the SFMS profile copy is performed mid-April and finalized. We'll go ahead and input those changes. One thing to note is as you're reviewing any changes, if you do have changes that maybe happened last biennium, go ahead and look at your spreadsheet and try to not have any kind of old changes that are not in there anymore that might have happened. In the past, we've had some alignment spreadsheets that maybe had some old data, and it just takes a little bit of extra time for Sabres and SFMS to work through to see if that change is still relevant anymore. So if you have any old notes or anything, comments in there, go ahead and clear them out. Anything.
Robert, can you hear me? We've lost your audio.
Orbits and R stars as best as possible. Next slide. Again, DO4 program codes on R stars must be set up for each summary cross-reference and detailed cross-reference. Lower level structures on the program code side can be set up. We just want to keep that 1-to-1 ratio, and updates to your program codes may require additional changes. Just again, communicate that with your SFMS analyst during that time. And if you have any questions, go ahead and contact Orbit's help, and we'll work through any kind of issues or changes that you might have coming up. With that, that concludes my section on the budget side. If you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you for joining us, Robert. We really appreciate it. We don't have any questions at this time, but we will always encourage people to reach out to you if they have questions arise.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are at our 11 o'clock hour, so I don't want to hold anyone over. I'm just going to walk through these slides within 2 minutes if you have the time to take. This was going to be our DAFR highlight, kind of in the same vein as our R-Star screen highlight. We thought we'd expand this out. The DAFR 8650 is the most requested DAFR report in R-Stars. It's a trial balance that is separated by D23 fund. And I have an example here. Please note that any identifying information, the fund number, the agency number was removed. And I've highlighted how it can be rolled up to different levels of category and class. There's information here about when you reorder it, how it will result, what the results will look like, and for what time periods. I found when a report is ordered for July to be especially a good reminder. And for those of you that this report is familiar, it's because this is the report that's required for the agencies to print and save before and after the DAFM 351 general close program. So that's probably the reason it's the most highly requested report. There are some OB reminders here from Aaron Wallace. I'll let you take a look at those. Some, reminders of the link to use for your production region, to contact this address if you have questions or issues, rather than Aaron directly, so that we've got good backup to help you out with. And some updates and reminders: don't combine your subject areas. There are repository reports available, and the passwords, whether you're a sync or non-sync agency, you do need to update your passwords every 90 days. Fabiola, do you want to wrap it up today?
Yeah, so thank everybody. I'm going to thank everybody for coming. We will see you at our next user group, which is May 2nd. And Julie, you can stop recording now.